This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.
Time to talk with Connor O'Gara from Saturday Down South. Connor, it's March, spring football, but it's also hardcore basketball where seasons end and seasons are defined. So we're about to have a lot of fun.
You know, I do love March. I really do. And I know I'm a football guy. I live for the fall these days. But, look, as somebody who went to a basketball school and wherein, you know, in 49 other states it's just basketball, a certain Indiana university may or may not have me on the edge of my seat. I am going to be living and dying with every single play. I get it. And I love this time of year. I'm not trading it in for the fall. But I will say I do get up for March probably more than the average person realizes.
And I remember what it's like to be a student at Indiana and be completely disappointed with the performance of your team in March. The 2 years I was a student there, they went one and out. One and out, man. Nobody saw that coming either. It was a total disappointment. That's how your season is defined. And we're not doing a segment on Indiana here, but you know, and conference tournaments, this is how a team can play into the tournament or maybe improve the seed a little bit if you, like, win your conference tournament. But I've said for a long time, and I didn't necessarily have, like, evidence to point to about this, that I don't think the selection committee really cares very much about what happens in conference tournaments unless a team wins the tournament and then they get the automatic bid. But you did some research about this. That's why I like having you on. You always come with cold, hard facts.
I can look at the recent SEC tournament and say, I don't know that the selection committee really cares that much about it. I really don't. And I look at it last year and the way they played out with an A&M team who was perceived to be on the bubble. They go all the way to the SEC championship, of course, and then lose to Tennessee and then find out, oh, you actually had to win the entire tournament to be able to get in. And then Tennessee, meanwhile, that was kind of lost in the shuffle. They entered the week as a top 10 team. I think they were like 8 or 9 or something like that. They win the SEC tournament, and then they get a 3 seed. And we're like, wait a minute, what? And it just doesn't really add up if you kind of look back at the recent history of the SEC, which, you know, credit the conference for being able to develop more of its basketball brand. You've had 4 consecutive years in which the SEC's had at least 6 teams in the NCAA tournament. So it's not that the selection committee has some anti-SEC thing that's going on, because they've rewarded the depth, but at the top, they really haven't. I mean, the SEC hasn't had a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament since 2015. So this is probably a year in which that should change with Alabama. But if it doesn't, I will definitely be pointing back to that, saying, you know, I just don't think they care about the SEC tournament that much.
Did you get a chance to watch any of that Houston-Memphis game? And because I like some Houston Cougars. I think they could be the number 1 overall seed. Did you get a chance to watch any of that?
I didn't, but you know what? As somebody who has had to painfully live through Kelvin Sampson having this second life as a college basketball coach, as somebody who, look, I went to Indiana 2008 through 2012, so that was the post-Kelvin Sampson sanctions. So I dealt with the aftermath of what he went through with a cell phone scandal that actually isn't even illegal anymore. So I watch his teams now kind of out of spite. And I'm amazed at how they're able to defend, and it seems like they can win these rock fights. But no, I mean, I am fully prepared for the very likely scenario that maybe Houston gets a 1 seed, my Indiana Hoosiers get a 4, and I have to watch Kelvin Sampson celebrate against my team. Yeah,
they had this little 3-2 matchup zone they were doing with the stud that hit the guard, man. Kelvin Sampson's the OG coach, man. I mean, he's one of the best to do it. That's for sure.
His team seemed like just brutal to play against. I don't know if there's a college football comp to that these days. Like, if you can really have that, because, you know, there's no. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Like, they're going to beat you with their defense.
They're physical, yeah.
Yeah, like that. They're going to beat you up. And I don't know if in today's day and age, because even like the Alabamas, Georgias of the world, they even have, you know, their high-powered offenses where, like, why wouldn't you want to have an offense that can put up 50 points in a given week? And Houston's like kind of the opposite of that. And they're this team that doesn't really care. But yeah, I mean, they're an easy team to root for, especially if you like kind of the throwback style.
Yeah, kind of like that Bob Huggins Cincinnati Bearcats style, or maybe even when Buzz was at West Virginia. I mean, they're going to play defense, they're going to match up on you and just make it hard on you. Kind of like Nolan Richardson a little bit, that 40 minutes of hell. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good comp. I like that. Yeah, there are so much better nicknames in college basketball than there are college football. Like 40 minutes of hell. I don't even think anybody in college football has as good of a nickname for a specific style as that. I mean, that is like fully entrenched into your identity. Even like the Loyola Marymount teams, back in the day, like, we get so caught up in, wins and losses and whatnot. It's kind of cool that college basketball, you can have this identity, a Press Virginia type identity, and be able to just kind of live off of that and essentially make your living, establishing that. And, what you do on the big stage is what determines, what we ultimately think of you in this business.
I guess row the boat doesn't do it for you with PJ in Minnesota as far as slogans are concerned.
No, I'm not anti-row the boat. PJ Fleck says, guys, I'm not for everyone. And he fully embraces that. I think there are certain guys who, like, I don't mind you going all in with your identity and kind of banging the drum for whatever sort of mantra that you have. I mean, the row the boat thing, like, it was cool in 2016, 2017, but I mean, nobody's sitting here going like, "Oh, you got to fear Minnesota because they're just going to row the boat. That's what they're going to keep doing." Like, you've got to really make it big time and have kind of your own personal touch on things for us to really care about you in college football.
So Kentucky's a team to watch. Obviously, the way they're playing, the way they played against Arkansas this last Saturday, doing it without a couple of their guys that are hurt. I wonder what you think of Arkansas. You can only go by what you've seen recently. We know there's a lot of talent there. They're not been able to put it together against good NCAA quality tournament teams, Power 5 level. We just haven't seen it for a while. It's been over a month since that kind of a victory. So I would say I don't know what to expect, but I don't know if I'm expecting very much in Nashville from Arkansas.
I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret here. I've got game-by-game predictions for the SEC tournament coming out on Saturday Down South tomorrow, Tuesday morning. And let's just say I have a certain Arkansas team going all the way to the championship. And, I'm realizing this is a massive, massive roll of the dice. I just kind of like the way that the bracket shakes out for them. Mm-hmm. And I think that going against an Auburn team that has struggled to really close out of games, and it's just been a nightmare in all these single-digit games, I think that bodes well. And, yes, I'm admitting there's probably too big of a piece of that Creighton game in Maui that's still entrenched into my brain when Arkansas was like, oh, yeah, absolutely, top 10 team, this has Final Four potential. And I realized coming into the conference tournament, having lost 3 consecutive games, it seems like one step forward, 2 steps back all year with Eric Musselman's squad. And, injuries have certainly played a part. And just not being able to establish that consistency has certainly been an issue. I mean, even the composure things, like, you'd ideally like to have a guy like Devo Davis on the court for a big-time game down the stretch and not have him getting tossed. But, I just think that Arkansas is one of those teams that can find offense in a variety of ways, and maybe that bodes well. And I think that kind of rewards – they're rewarded with maybe a deep run that catches a few people off guard.
Well, it's a postseason that matters, obviously, and that's why the players stick around. It's totally different from college football. It's like in college basketball, whatever happens in the regular season, we will discount that depending on what happens in March. If Arkansas, and they're in the NCAA tournament. I don't think there's anything that can happen that keeps them out right now unless they get shut out. If they don't score a point against Auburn in the one game, like that would be it. But they'll be in. So who knows what they can do? They've got the talent to make a run. But your season in college basketball is defined in March. Your college football season is defined as everything that happens before the postseason, unless you're like a handful of teams.
Yeah, it's weird how that has totally been the case, more so in the last, I'd say really in the playoff era more than ever. And in basketball, go ask Kentucky fans how great they felt about last year's regular season, or if they cared more about losing to St. Peter's in the first round of the NCAA tournament. And, it's clearly that second one because, people point and laugh at you for the way that your season ends up. You're going to remember that a little bit longer. But, and that's part of the reason why I think college football has tried to preserve this regular season for so long, and why there are a lot of purists that are very fearful that once expansion happens of the college football playoff in 2024, that we're going to get a regular season that's a little bit like college basketball, which, sometimes in college basketball, it's weird. If you're a team that's safely in the NCAA tournament, you almost have to talk down your excitement with some of this regular season stuff. Like, even Purdue, you hear Matt Painter talk about this yesterday where, Purdue wins the Big Ten regular season and they're going to be a 1 seed in the conference tournament. And Matt Painter's like, I don't care about the Big Ten tournament. Give me to the postseason. That doesn't even matter for me at this point, because Matt Painter is the guy that's never been to the Final Four and hangs over it. People say that's what's holding him back from being considered one of the elite coaches in the sport. So, yeah, I mean, that's the way that it ends up with college basketball. And, fortunately for Arkansas, Eric Musselman's put himself in a good spot with what he's done in the postseason. And that's certainly a little bit more than those people in Kentucky can say.
How much do you think these coaches change a little bit when this tournament vibe gets here and the atmosphere, kind of to your point, like as far as, man, it's us against the world when they get to these tournaments? Because Coach Musselman has a good track record. If it's Nevada or wherever he's been, when he gets to postseason play, they usually have success in tournament play, even in preseason tournaments. He won the one last year in St. Louis, had success in Maui. I mean, he's a tournament coach.
Yeah, he is. And there are some guys who I just don't think are. Like, I think they just get on that stage and I think they overthink things. I think they struggle with rotations. I think they get in their head when a key player picks up a second foul and they don't coach to that scenario. Like, Rick Barnes is kind of the perfect example of that in the SEC right now, with that guy who you're just waiting for something to go wrong in March. I mean, to think that guy has only been to one Elite Eight in the last 15 years is baffling. And I understand, like, he's one of the best coaches in the sport, and nobody can take that away from him. The guy's been to a quarter century's worth of NCAA tournament, and Tennessee is better with him than without him. But, I mean, you see it last year, the way that it plays out. Like, that's a game, they're in control. There's 8 minutes left in that game at the under 8 time, and you're up by like 7 points against Michigan, an 11 seed. You should be taking control, and instead they let up a massive run, and they lose a game as a 3 seed to an 11. And you're kind of like, wow, how did that happen? I mean, it is coaching, and I do think that certain guys get in their own head. A certain Tom Crean didn't realize that Syracuse was going to come out in a zone defense when they were facing them in the Sweet 16, and I don't know how you're able to overlook something like that. But there are certain coaches who absolutely get in their own heads, and there are certain coaches who don't.
Can't let you go without asking about the Ross Dellinger report of what he thinks the schedule will look like in the SEC. I'll take his best educated guess, because I think Ross is a great reporter. And I wonder what you make of this, because nobody's ever going to be fully happy with the schedule, and nobody ever seems to be fully happy with the schedule. It's like coaches will gripe about it. And I guess Brian Kelly says, fine, give us Ole Miss, A&M, and Alabama. Nick Saban's like, fairness. Like, give me a break, please. Fairness? Auburn, Tennessee, and LSU? Alabama should be playing like, I don't know, the Houston Texans or something at some point.
I'd pay to see that. I would. Look, at the same time, I agree with that. If you're Nick Saban, why wouldn't you come out and leak this and have the public support on your side to try and get this changed? Because you are looking at this through a different lens than others are. And that is reality. Alabama is looking at this through a national championship lens. And it is trying to control what it possibly can at this stage of the game before those things are out of their control. And that's what I think Nick Saban, by virtue of linking this to Ross Dellinger, that this is clearly the plan and he's not exactly on board with it, that's his gripe. And, I think that we look at it now differently than we did during COVID with 2020, wherein the schedule was changed and Arkansas was the team that was going to get a raw deal. You just kind of knew. And you knew that Alabama and Georgia weren't, but back then it was different with a 14 playoff, and you thought, okay, if you can help those teams, just like the Big Ten and Kevin Warren did with Ohio State when they weren't canceling the season, you help your championship contenders get to a championship. And they were able to do that in 2020. It's different now with an expanded playoff, though, because you have more wiggle room, and it's more about being able to sell these rivalry games because you can do that to get that new TV package. And, trying to sell these rivalry games is really important. And you don't necessarily have to worry about Alabama getting left out of the field if it has 2 losses. You can lose 3 games and now get into the college football playoffs. So, yeah, it'll all sort itself out. But I understand why Nick Saban did what he did. I just don't know that it's going to lead to any sort of change.
BetOnline remains your number one source for all your sports betting this season. Everything from the NFL and bowl season to esports. You'll find the latest odds, team matchup info, player news, and game trends at BetOnline. BetOnline features live betting, free contests, and live scores for almost any sport or game imaginable. We're the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite leagues and events. Head to betonline.ag to join and receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Make sure to use the promo code BELIEVE to receive your rewards. That's BLEAV. Bet Online, where the game starts.